Hello out there. I'm Poetic Heretic, and tonight, as the title suggests, we will indeed be looking at a public review that I left of my abusive ex-therapist, or more specifically, his workplace, on Google. So I want to welcome you to this presentation. There is a reason that I'm just in a small box on the screen right now, and I will show you in a moment. But first, before I get to reading the actual review, I want to give you a little bit of background information as to how this review came about. So for those of you who do not know, a while back, for nearly a whole year, was seeing a therapist who turned out to be very abusive indeed, and we'll get into that. And eventually it got to the point where I stormed out of there one day because I couldn't take it anymore. And so a couple months ago, I was still writhing in the pain, the anger, the discomfort, the trauma of what I had experienced. And I really found that I wanted to leave a review, a public Google review on the place that this therapist worked at, Rural Mental Health, which we will be looking at shortly. And I wanted to express how I felt as much as I could, for one reason being the same reason, or one of the same reasons anyway, that I'm doing this very live stream right now, which is to help raise awareness for other people out there who may be susceptible to the same thing, to help raise awareness about therapist abuse. Now, at this point in time, if you are wondering, yes, I am still very personally traumatized by this experience. I am someone who has trained himself over a number of years now, really, to have control over his emotions, and yet right now I'm feeling noticeably agitated about this, and it's noticeably difficult for me to remain fully calm as I am doing this live stream right here, right now. But I need to do it both to raise awareness and for my own personal need to expose what happened to me. Now, a couple other little issues I want to address first. Well, first of all, as I said, this was a couple months ago that I wrote this review, and I wasn't sure if I was ever going to share it on YouTube in the way that I am now, but I have come to the decision that I should. There are some things in this review and in this very live stream that some may find a little bit objectionable without the context that I'm about to go over, and that is that nothing I reveal in this live stream or in this review about any one person other than myself or about any business is not already public knowledge easily available on the internet. So for anyone who is worrying that I may be crossing any lines here, this is a public business. This is a public individual, my abusive ex-therapist, a social worker who works with the public. I am not revealing anything that should not be revealed in this live stream. And I stand by that. I would challenge anyone who thinks otherwise. So I just want to make that clear. I do not do a live stream like this lightly. I will say that as well. The only other thing that I want to say is that once I am in the process of reading the review, I don't know if there will be anyone who's interested enough in this to come in during the live stream and watch while it's live, but if they do, and if anyone comments while this is live, then I will be looking at those comments after I am done reading the review and responding to them. So just wait until after if you have any comments or questions, if you're hearing my voice right now live. So other than that, I think that's about it. And I think we are ready to get this show on the road. So let me unveil my display capture here. Now you can see my desktop in all of its glory. Let's check on the stream real quick. All right, here we are. And yeah, everything looks good. And here it is. Here we have Rural Mental Health Associates. Those are the people that I saw. That is the facility that I went to. As you can see, I'm not the only one who has left some negative reviews on this place. In fact, there's a total of 3 reviews that left only 1 star, including my own. So other people had some not so pleasant experiences with this place as well, interestingly enough. But we won't be looking at that tonight. We will only be looking at my own review. And so I'm going to click on this here. You can see my review right there. I'm also going to increase the size of it for anyone who may be watching on a particularly small screen, so hopefully you can see that. If not, I mean, I'm going to be reading it aloud anyway. So, let's see, everything's still looking good. Looks like it. All right. You'll have to forgive my perfectionism. All right, and here we go. Horrible, abusive, never again. I saw a therapist here from March 2019 through February 2020, and it was the worst experience imaginable. I was repeatedly invalidated, gaslighted, and not taken seriously. To be fair, I can only review my experience with this specific therapist, whose name is John Ryla, licensed social worker. But this facility as a whole nevertheless still deserves only 1 out of 5 stars for letting someone that abusive work there. Last I checked, and according to their website, he still works there. I saw John regularly as a result of severe trauma and abuse that I had experienced for many years, and I was basically told to get a job. When I explained that I have many physical health problems, including a heart condition, he didn't care, appearing to believe that I was just making excuses. Additionally, when I told him that I do YouTube and prefer to put most of my time and energy into that, he refused to see that as an acceptable alternative. Rather than honoring that which I am, he tried to turn me into what he is. This man seems to have no understanding whatsoever of the term emotional availability. Over and over again, when I would bring up challenging issues, his method of therapy was to convince me that my reality wasn't real, also known as gaslighting, an officially recognized form of abuse. Rather than talking things through with me, he only seemed interested in offering me, at best, a grab bag of coping mechanisms, which by their very nature are unhealthy. In my final session with him, before storming out of there because I couldn't take it anymore, he asked me what his role was supposed to be in these sessions, because I, as someone who proudly has a mind of his own and refuses to just put up with abuse, eventually began respectfully challenging him on his abusive quote-unquote advice, and apparently that led him to believe that I was just disagreeing with him about everything, yet another untruth. So he asked me what his role was. At the time, I sat there feeling so hurt, scared, and confused by him that all I could utter was I was there to process my issues. He apparently thinks that gaslighting/coping mechanisms and processing emotional wounds are the same thing. They are not. He wanted to know what his role was. Here is the answer. to make the unconscious conscious. But I, as the client, should not have to tell him that. I can only say, thank goodness I went into this already having a background / some level of understanding of psychology myself because of the work that I do. That gave me a basis from which to stand up for myself and realize what was happening. It is now over 3 months later since I walked out of there for the last time, and I am literally sitting here shaking as I type this. But I am doing it anyway because this kind of abuse needs to be exposed so that, hopefully, other people do not fall prey to it. I'm not sure what the other therapists there are like, and I no longer care to find out. After this experience, I never plan on trying to get therapy again, despite my crippling mental health issues. He even once tried to use Trump as an example of someone with good mental health. That man should be fired from his job. I can only wonder as to how many other people, perhaps in even worse condition than I am, that he has deeply wounded through his gaslighting and invalidation. I don't know how many times I left those sessions just feeling confused and uncertain of my own sense of reality. It is only in more recent times that I came to find out that is one of the biggest signs of gaslighting. He made me feel horrible about myself. My self-esteem plummeted from those sessions. He barely ever recognized any of my accomplishments, and instead of helping me, or even believing me, apparently, with my issues, he repeatedly just tried to tell me how to live my life. I could go on and on about this, but apparently I have run out of room. Just know this: rural mental health with agents of invalidation like John Ryla working there is not but rural mental illness. Save yourself and stay away. And so that is my review, dear viewers. So I'm just going to make a couple comments about this before I check on the stream again. I want to say that indeed, as I mentioned there towards the end or at the end, I very much had run out of room. The original version of that, at least until I realized I was running out of room, was significantly longer. I see we're having some connection issues, but I think it's stabilizing. Don't worry, I'm also recording this as a video at the same time if necessary. So if we have too many connection issues, I can just upload the video after instead so that nothing is lost no matter what. But yes, I had to edit that down significantly once I realized that I was running out of room, because there was so much that you guys just wouldn't believe that took place in those sessions. It was so shockingly abusive and ridiculous and deeply painful for me, especially when I'd already gone in there so traumatized and deeply hurt when it comes to like other people as well, especially like from having been isolated for long times at many different parts of my life. It is hard enough for me to talk to people, whether online or in person, and he just made it 10 times more difficult. I feel like I'm off center here or something. But so the truth or the reality is that if I had unlimited space, if I could have written something that was as long as I would have preferred to have written, that review would have been probably at least twice as long, maybe 3 times as long, maybe more. It's hard to say. I mean, this is an experience that still haunts me every single day. And it was late February that I finally stormed out of there. So I've definitely had a lot of time to reflect on the situation and heal from it to, I think, a significant extent. But I mean, let's see, well, it's August 11th now, the early hours of August 11th as I'm live streaming this. So it will be 6 months at the end of this month since I stormed out of there. And still, like, almost every single day of my life, I am plagued by memories of that. Now, again, I don't want to make this all about me, because this isn't just about me. This is not an isolated incident. And again, that's part of the reason that I'm even doing this in the first place. This is something that goes on much too often, I'm afraid, as I looked at, I guess, in another live stream a while back, soon after this happened, on therapist abuse. You can look that up on my channel if you're wondering about that, or if you would like to check that out. This is something that happens much too often. And so anything I can do, especially after what I've been through, to expose what happened to me and expose this very real societal issue, or I guess therapy issue, I don't know, mental health treatment issue, is something that I want to do. I want to say that even though, as I mentioned, I personally am not someone who at this point am willing to seek treatment for my mental health issues through a therapist again, after what I went through, I have personally come to the decision that it is not worth it. I also want to say that I don't want to discourage other people who maybe need serious help from seeking that help either, because not every therapist is going to be an abusive therapist. There are good therapists out there, at least I still believe there are. There are many people who claim to have gotten great help from therapists, from mental health professionals out there. And so I don't want to discourage anyone from getting the help they need if they need it. But I also want people to be aware that if you feel like you're being gaslighted, you're probably being gaslighted. If you feel like you're being invalidated, you're probably being invalidated. If you feel like you're being abused in any way, you're probably being abused. I mean, time and time again, after those sessions, I found myself like questioning what happened. I thought, am I just like being ridiculous here? I mean, this guy was literally, I think he said he was 64, 60, I don't know, early mid 60s, something like that. And I'm thinking, well, he's a lot older than me. Surely he knows what he's talking about. But eventually I came to realize, no, that's literally like my own issues trying to reinforce. It's complicated to explain, but basically I was in a sense almost trying to invalidate or gaslight myself because I couldn't understand how this authority figure, who was supposed to be someone I can trust, supposed to be someone who knows what he's talking about, supposed to be someone who knows what he's doing, could possibly be this abusive individual, or be lying to me or misleading me or whatever. I will say also, much of that final session is kind of a blur in my mind. It's really quite interesting when I look back and try to remember it. I can't remember so much of what he said, even though normally I remember like everything that people say, especially when it is like emotionally charged. But I can't remember much of what he said that day, and I think it's because it was so like traumatizing to me that I like blocked it out. Now, maybe part of that is just my own predisposition to be that hurt and traumatized by that. But regardless, a literal trained therapist with years and years of experience should know better. So it's just, I mean, it's ridiculous. I could, like I said in my review, I could go on and on about this. I mean, one of the things that, just to give you an example that really irks me to this day, is that as I was getting up to leave and I was gathering my things that day, and there were a lot of things to gather because it was a very cold day, so I've had a lot of coats and stuff because I had to walk to and from therapy. Like, as I was doing that, one of the first things he said was, yeah, you've got to get out into the world more. You've got to get around other people. In other words, basically blaming me, like even right up until the end, blaming me, saying it was my issue, rather than taking responsibility himself for his abusive behavior. You know, I mean, my God, there was one point very early on in the sessions where I was talking about feeling like injustices had been done to me, and he suggested that I should kill someone. I'm not kidding you in the slightest. He literally suggested, well, you could just kill them. And you know what that is? Obviously, he's not really suggesting that I do something like that, which I would obviously never ever do, by the way. He was trying to see if he basically, this is what my intuition strongly tells me, and the only explanation that makes any sense. He thought that I was someone, I don't know if it was because of how I dressed or the things I talked about or what, but that I was someone who may potentially be capable of that. And he was trying to trick me into some kind of like confession or something like that. He was trying to like elicit that from me, or at least that's what I think, that's what I most strongly suspect, because I can't think of any other possible reason as to why he would bring that up. In fact, I think he said it a couple of times. Like once is bad enough, but a couple of times. So that was very, I mean, again, I don't want to make this all about me, but as someone who grew up being very different and who was bullied and abused for years on end for being different, it is very hurtful. It is very hurtful to open yourself up and become vulnerable to a therapist like that, only for them to basically say that they think that you're ready to like go kill people. It's very hurtful. When the reality is, I never in a million years, no matter how much I hated someone, would want to physically harm them, let alone kill them. I would never, ever want to do that. So that was deeply upsetting. And just his bringing up Trump, as I mentioned, like, regardless of what your political views are, you should not bring up politics in therapy. And it's not even like politics was the subject matter at the time. He literally brought it up as an example of someone, in his opinion, take that for what you will, someone who is supposed to have a thick skin. So Trump is supposed to have a thick skin. It's like, you really shouldn't use a figure like that as an example for a client when you're a therapist. I mean, that is extremely unprofessional. So in response to that, I told him exactly what I thought of Trump. So that was kind of funny, I will admit. But that was another thing. There was another time where this was a completely separate occasion, but I literally did mention politics for some reason. Like I was like, oh, I was looking into politics this past week or something. And he started talking about it and basically trying to like dissuade me from it. And then he literally said to me, not kidding in the slightest, he literally said, "You'll end up being a conservative if you follow my advice." It's like, you shouldn't do that as a therapist. You should not do that. But anyway, I don't want to turn this into a rant about me, like I said. So I guess in conclusion, I just wish that I had gotten out of there much sooner. I wanted to try to make it work. Like, I really tried to make it work. I really tried. I thought, no, I've got to try to get help. This is good for me. And then I was like, oh, well, if there's disagreements, then let's reintegrate, that sort of thing. But in retrospect, I really should have just gotten out of there at the first sign of abuse. And that's my message to other people, by the way. If you think that you are experiencing therapist abuse, get out and get out fast as soon as you possibly can. You do not want the pain, the torment, the trauma, the hell that I have experienced on an almost daily basis since I finally got out of there for yourself. You do not want to experience this. Trust me. Get out, get out, get out. Find another therapist who is not abusive, who is what a therapist should be. Or if you feel like therapy is not right for you, then that's your choice. I would totally respect that because, like I said, at this point, I don't think I will ever, unless heaven forbid something else very traumatic happened to me and I really needed it, I don't think I will ever search for another therapist or risk that again. But that's also partly because I'm, I guess, privileged to be someone who, while I haven't exactly studied mental health over the years, I have studied a lot of related stuff, and I have, studied, I guess, some psychology that has crept into my studies, at least from time to time. So I'm someone who can almost I think especially with my spiritual practices and my, mental training that I give myself on virtually a daily basis, I'm someone who can almost give myself therapy, but I'm privileged to do that. Like, I recognize that the average person, maybe they have their 9-to-5 job, or they've got kids or school, or, any or all of the above. They don't have time to do all these studies for years and learn the things that I've learned and train themselves in the way that I've trained myself. I get that. I'm just saying that for me, it's a bit easier, and I thank my lucky stars, I guess, as they say, that I am fortunate in that way, and my heart really goes out to, I empathize so deeply with those out there who really need therapy and can't get it, whether that's because they, heaven forbid, encounter an abusive therapist, or their insurance doesn't cover it, or they otherwise don't have enough money for it, or whatever. My heart really goes out to them. That's deeply tragic. Which that does remind me of another thing that I want to say before I forget about this therapist that was so ridiculous, and definitely something else I would advise you watch out for, is that when I would try to explain things to him, like my perspective on things, it was so freaking frustrating. It was like what I said went in one ear and out the other for him. It just went in one ear and out the other. Like, I couldn't explain any kind of nuanced perspective. He literally just saw me as what he wanted to see, as what maybe, I don't know, maybe his training had trained him to see a person like me as. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I went there to get healing for issues that I dealt with, and I was basically told how to live my life. He brought up all of these irrelevant issues. I didn't need help with that. I'm good, at least for the most part, when it comes to my life decisions. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to be told how to live my life. And so, yeah, again, he wanted to know what his role was. With me, it was to make the unconscious conscious. And he said that he felt like I just wanted him to agree with everything I said, which is incredibly patronizing and disrespectful, by the way. He's like, what is my purpose here? Am I supposed to just say, okay, and then he said my real name. Okay, insert real name here. That's right. And it's like, no, first of all, by suggesting that I just want you to agree with everything I say, you're really actually saying, when you really think about it, that you expect me to agree with everything you say. You're literally telling me not to think for myself. So, okay, I can mock you right back, Mr. John Ryla, licensed social worker. I can mock you right back and say, Okay, so I'm not supposed to think for myself then. All right, fine. I just won't think for myself. I'll just blindly believe whatever you tell me, and I'll be a total obedient robot. And I'll never think for myself again, because clearly that's what you're advising here. That's your method of therapy, is to teach people to not think for themselves. Yeah, well, I'm poetic heretic, and that's not what I stand for at all. Even in that scared, terrified state that he brought me into, even when I went in there and it was like my real personality as I know myself just went out the freaking door, and instead this like scared little child self of mine or something came out. Even in that fear and the difficulty for me to even maintain my composure because of the trauma he inflicted upon me, even in the midst of that wretched storm, I still remained poetic heretic, and I still remained strong enough to know that I should think for myself. And so guess what, John Ryla and rural mental health? Guess what, dear wretched abusive therapist and the facility that enables this place? How does it feel? How does it feel to deal with someone who actually has a mind of his own? How does it feel to not have someone just so easily go along with your wretched, abusive, gaslighting, agent of invalidation agenda? How does it feel to deal with someone who actually has a mind of his own? Tell me that, Mr. Therapist. How does it feel? And so that's my story. There's so much more I could say about this, but I don't think it's appropriate at this time. I'll just say that when I walked out the door there, part of me wishes that I had said something along the lines of, oh, I don't even know. I actually tweeted this once before, and I can't remember the exact words, but something along the lines of, I'm poetic heretic, and now it says we've been reconnected. Okay, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Again, don't put up with therapist abuse. Please, if you think you're experiencing it, get out at the first available opportunity. You do not want this. Trust me. You do not want to have to live with this pain and trauma that I've lived with ever since. So, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and have a great night. Unless you're an abusive, wretched therapist.